That's right, my friends. The rare out of print Friday the 13th complete series tin that came today. It's the only thing that came today, but it was well worth it. Besides the Halloween set that Scream Factory put out, this was like my other big selling regret from the past that I have now rectified. And why do I say that? Well, not only did this go out of print and it was expensive at the time, even more expensive now that it's gone out of print. Not only that, but this is the only time in the US thus far, or really, like, I've seen other places in the world that have, like, maybe some versions of Jason Goes to Hell and Jason X on Blu-ray, but if you do see them at all, they're really, really pricey. And they may not even be official for all I know. I really don't know. But the point is that, so Paramount, they released, later on, they released the versions that, like, they released the first 8 films that they still had the rights to. This was back, you can actually see on the bottom here, you can see Paramount and Warner Brothers, because this was, again, I mentioned this before, but this was during that time when they were okay with having, like, a co-distribution deal for their Blu-rays, and when that expired, then everything that ever came out with, both of their films together went out of print. And so what happened was you had the 8 Paramount films that got released on Blu-ray as part of this set and also separately. But then, later out on Paramount, they released those 8 ones separately, and then Warner Brothers, they put out the remake and they put out Freddy vs. Jason, but they did not put out Jason Goes to Hell or Jason X separately on Blu-ray for whatever reason. On DVD, yes, but not on Blu-ray. And so with this set, which again tragically is out of print, but I got it back, with this set you get the original 8 Paramount films, and you get the 2 New Line Cinema ones, Jason Goes to Hell and Jason X, and you also get Freddy vs. Jason, and you get the 2009 remake. And I think that's pretty sweet. So as you recall, I mentioned Freddy vs. Jason in the past. Well, that's why. Plus, obviously, you get a bonus disc and everything. It's a beautiful package. If you're a huge fan of the series, then you'll love it. It's got this cool wristband here. It's I told the others, they didn't believe me, you're all doomed. Because of course, see, here's the thing. So I'll just be honest with you. So you had slasher films prior to Halloween. You had, Black Christmas. You had the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You even had Psycho and Peeping Tom in 1960. You had plenty of precedents for it. Halloween was the first film, which it's up there. That was the first slasher film that where all the various elements, they all kind of came together in one movie. And they kind of helped set the stage for the slasher as a genre. But then Friday the 13th came around. The elements of the film, like the hockey mask and the machete and all that stuff, they kind of get introduced gradually. It's not until the third film where you actually see the full Jason that that we all know, fully realized. But at any rate, with the Friday the 13th series, it kind of helped to concretize some of the more exploitation film aspects of the slasher genre, even more so than Halloween, which was technically had the budget and the distribution model of an exploitation film. It just happened to be a really, really good film, with a lot of great tension and everything. But as far as like the more kind of classical elements of what people commonly associate with the slasher genre, such as the horny teenagers, the masked killer being particularly sadistic and brutal, which Michael Myers, like, for the most part, like, his killings were a little bit more neat and precise. They were still brutal, but they weren't quite as, like, Jason's a brute, no question about it. And so I think a lot of those elements, they definitely fully came into realization with the Friday the 13th films. Now, the series as a whole is very, very uneven, even more so than the Halloween series. Now, the Halloween series is uneven in terms of its timeline and its continuity. I mean, Friday the 13th has those elements too, but it's just more uneven in terms of like quality, in terms of just different storytelling focuses, and things like that. There's the closest to a main character that we get in any of these, besides Jason, obviously, the closest we ever get is Tommy Jarvis, and he's not even in all of them, and he's played by different actors in each one. So it's like, it's one of those things where obviously people love the films, but they're not really like, objectively speaking, they're not really perfect. And again, not to say Halloween is either, but they're a little bit more, I'd say, more blatantly imperfect in terms of like just the fact that so much of the time the focus is just on, okay, let's set up these people and then we'll watch them all get killed, and then every imitator that came along, they copied that formula, which, to be fair, Friday the 13th was actually kind of characterized, like, as a series, it has been kind of characterized as a Halloween ripoff, which I mean, you can't really not make that comparison, but at the same time, Halloween owes a lot to Black Christmas, and I would argue that Halloween is actually somewhat of a Black Christmas ripoff in terms of, not in terms of the plot so much as it is, I mean, other than the basics of, a mass killer killing predominantly girls, but not exclusively to Michael Myers. But like, more so there in terms of like the first person camera and that kind of stuff, which Black Christmas did that first in the slasher genre. But anyway, yeah, it's hard not to make that comparison, but Friday the 13th does have its own identity. It has its own very dedicated fan base, and people that really love the films despite their flaws, which, and I guess that for me, like, that's usually like, I usually, when I think of Friday the 13th, I do think of it as a very flawed series. But then again, Saw is flawed. I mean, technically, take any horror series and, you're going to find flaws in them. I don't think that there's like a perfect horror series necessarily. I mean, you got some that are closer to it than others, but still. And then, of course, this set comes with those cheesy anaglyph 3D glasses here with the red and the blue there to try and give the illusion of 3D. And that, now these are not the stereo vision 3D process, and they're not like a proper modern 3D. Because like Friday the 13th Part 3, that was the 3D one. That one, it has still not gotten a proper 3D Blu-ray release, and now that 3D is largely passé in the realm of, well, home viewing for sure, which it always kind of was a niche thing anyway, but now that it's especially passé, and I think it's getting more and more passé in the theater world, which, again, if we even have theaters to go back to once the coronavirus stuff is all over. But yeah, I know for myself, like, I was never really all that into 3D. Like, I mean, it is a gimmick, and I mean, if you want gimmicky 3D, then Part 3 is by far one of the most gimmicky 3D films I've ever seen, just because they really they use and abuse the stuff coming at you, like, a lot. They really, really emphasize it, and like, to a kind of absurd degree. But obviously this was in the second wave of 3D, the first being in the 50s, and then the third wave being in the 2010s. And I think we're coming to the end of that, which is good, because I think it was, I don't really get it. But anyway, this one also comes with this cool patch here. The digital codes, which I already have the digital codes from when I, when I had the set last, so I might, sell them or give them to somebody, or I don't know. And then, of course, this cool booklet. So yeah, if you are a Friday the 13th fan, then you probably either already have this set, or if you don't, then I would highly recommend tracking it down. Only problem is, again, like, it was pricey when it was new, and it's even pricier now that it is out of print. But I managed to, well, I got this one off of eBay, and I managed to make the seller an offer that was halfway decent and, was acceptable. And, so occasionally you'll find, I'm sure, sellers that are willing to play ball with you. more so than others might. Now, I've seen some of these things, like if they're brand new in the package. Now, some of them I have seen go for just these obscene amounts, like $500 to $1,000, and it's not even worth. It's nowhere near worth that. But if you can find it for roughly around the $200 mark, then that is roughly about where I. That's about what I spent on it. But and yeah, when this was new, it wasn't that much cheaper, to be honest. So it's not even like you're spending an exorbitant amount relative to what you would have in the times when this was new. But at any rate, yeah, that's the only thing that came today because it is Memorial Day, and I'm surprised that we got any mail of any kind. And I actually have quite a few packages off camera that I need to take to the post office, but that'll have to be tomorrow. But yeah, so that's what came today. So yeah, if you're a Friday the 13th fan, let me know. Let me know if you got this set or if you got the 8 movie one that Paramount put out. That's one that I used to have, and then I sold it. Glad I got this back though, because it's well worth it. So yeah, just like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon, set phasers to stun, warp factor 5. And kind of funny that I'm saying that because, we've got at least the Paramount ones. I think New Line still has the rights to the series as a whole now, or to the post, Part 8 ones. But kind of funny I say that because of, Paramount, and then Star Trek's owned by, Paramount and all that. So it kind of, to a certain extent, they're kind of in the same little family there. So yeah, set phasers to stun and watch out for Jason as he goes into space, except that was the New Line one, so maybe not. But yeah, so just stay tuned. Got some more cool stuff coming in the mail. And yeah, just continue to keep safe and corona free as much as possible.